and I want to say 99% of people don't take ownership of things. By ownership, I mean if things fail, they're on your ass. If things succeed, you will get some credit, but then majority of times you will not get the credit. So be happy with that as well.
Some very shiny kid with high horsepower comes to you and says, bro, I am a PM, I've thought about it, I've seen everything, that you are wrong. How do you deal with such situations? Like,
first, I always tell people, get off your high horse. What actually defines a culture of the organization is the kind of people who are getting hired in your organization, is the kind of people who are getting promoted in your organization, and is the kind of people who are getting fired in your organization. In my career in the fintech space, that during this time of crisis, how as a product manager and product leader, and what can I do for these customers who are actually struggling and cannot afford to use our business?
Before I start, once again, bro, thank you very much. Super grateful. So that I start with that, right? Once again, you're someone who I met, who I spoke to, and I've looked at you in terms not only from a learning perspective, but from a demeanor perspective. You're someone who I deeply look up to. Thank you very much. I'll do a quickly 2-minute introduction of you, right? I know I'll do a poor job, but that you will have to make do with, right? I'm sure. So let me quickly start a brief about Prerit, right? Yes. Awesome. So it's wonderful to have you, bro. I think Prerit started his journey from BITS Pilani. He did his BTech in computer science. From there, where he was an exchange student, he moved to UIUC, where he completed his BTech in computer science or his bachelor's in computer science. I think post that, he started his journey as a software developer, right, with eBay. He spent kind of 2 years, 2.5 years over there. And then he moved into his first full-fledged product role, which was at Yahoo. Right. I think he joined there as an APM, led the wallet product. And I'm talking about the days when Yahoo was the president of culture. I think if you look at the early 2000s to the early 2010s and 12s, Yahoo was the company which took a lot of Bay Area companies took inspiration for their culture, for their leadership principles, and all of those things. Right. Then I think his next role was with GE. Right, where he spent considerable time as a staff product manager, working across various domains, but primarily in the fintech space. Right. Then his next role, primarily after G, was with the App Store, where he joined as a PM, again taking care of payment products, and then eventually becoming a senior PM. And in his more recent role, he's the group PM at Adobe, and where he takes care of the AI portfolio, risk portfolio from a payment side of the structure, the billing cycles and things like that. He's also an MBA from the prestigious Haas School of Business, and he's also done a leadership product management program from Stanford, obviously. So thank you very much, Prerit. Once again, super lovely, super grateful for you to be here. Looking forward to learn from you, and I think everybody is. So Janta Vahi, first 30 minutes, I will push my bat into Prerit and ask him "Kaun banega crorepati" wale sawal, and I would love to hear his responses. And then I would want you to raise your hands. I would definitely give more options to women. Right, that's my personal bias, so I want to keep it that way. So if you please raise your hands, you can go through the answers. You can probably structure your thoughts, and I'll keep calling you. And you can ask from all walks of life. How did he essentially why did he choose to do an MBA? How did he start his journey? How does an APM work? How do you make decisions at a GPM level? Whatever questions you wish to ask, up to you. So Prerit, I think the first question that I keep asking all of my friends who come on the podcast is that more than becoming any kind of product leader or something like that, I think the deeper question that I want to ask you is, who is a good operator according to you? And here I'm consciously using the word operator, which means in any walk of life, or more over your career, illustrious career of working across so many good companies, right? What are the principles that have shaped you into the kind of leader that you are? And what are those core value system behaviors, right, which really make a 1% operator stay away from an average operator, or how he or she looks at things? I think that's the first question that I wanted to ask. Yeah.
Sure. Before I start, Shravan, I was saying that when you were introducing me, for a second, it was a flashback, how I started my journey. It felt me that I'm getting old at this particular point of time. कि यार बहुत साल बीत गए हैं over there. But that being said, so every show and every person will have its different set of core principles and values. When you say what an operator is, I will only say two things that to me are very core. And this generally shows up in the people that I hire in my team as well over there. First, I always tell people, get off your high horse. There are people who tend to have, certainly in product management, and who become, grow vertically within an organization. There is a sense of ego or the sense of righteousness that come in people, where they say that we know all. It's more important to them to be right than to be learning all the time. So one thing for me is very, very critical is, even, and this I make sure that my team knows this, that do not have that ego to say I am right, for whatever reason that might be, right? Have an open mind to listen and to hear what the other person has to say, because you will be surprised what their perspective is and from what walk of life they are coming. So no matter which company you are, you're a product person, an engineer, a senior engineer, an architect, a designer, a CPO, a CMO, make sure that lower your ego in life and just have the capacity to learn no matter where you are. That is one thing that to me is, as an operator and a good operator, is very, very critical. The second point that I will say, and there are only two things, because when you have many things, then I tend to think that you have nothing over there. So the second thing that I will say that is extremely important for me to be a good operator, Shravan, is a sense of ownership. Okay. These days, you will see what happens. You're sitting in a meeting or you're sitting in a discussion, and people will say, I didn't do this because this is not my job. This is somebody else's job. Or people will say, this is not what I'm doing. Someone else is supposed to do these kind of things. You will be surprised that how important this skill is to just take the ownership of things and run with it. Majority of people, and I want to say 99% of people, don't take ownership of things. By ownership, I mean, if things fail, they're on your ass. If things succeed, you will get some credit, but then majority of times you will not get the credit. So be happy with that as well, over there. So lower your ego or have your ego in check. And second, start taking ownership of things, no matter what it is, in your general life, in your work. Stop blaming other things or other people or environments for things that you can control. Take ownership, move forward from there. So to me, those two things are extremely critical to be a good operator in any aspect of life: your financial freedom, your work, your married life, anything, right? The only thing is that when I talk to my wife, she does say that, stop being an owner. Let I am the owner of the house, so don't worry about it and stop chatting over there. So that's the place that we should stop. But other than that, I would certainly say, have a high sense of ownership and high sense of accountability.
I think I wanted to kind of ask you one kind of follow up question on this, and I've seen this very interesting quality in like really good people. They have this thing of not taking things personally, right? Even though they might have a very strong opinion about things, but if they're presented with the right data, they have this behavior of saying, "Yes, I was probably wrong. I didn't
Yeah.
think it that way." And how does that happen? Because एक सवाल मैं आपसे भी पूछना चाहता हूँ मतलब and it is something that you would have faced in a daily life. Nobody likes hearing bad things or probably divergent opinions than what you believe in with you. How do you handle such scenarios? Like some very shiny kid with high horsepower comes to you and says, "Bro, I am a PM. I've thought about it. I've seen everything. Like you are wrong." How do you deal with such situations? Like just in general, because product teams are generally with this high IQ. मतलब बहुत मचाना है जीवन में high agency teams. That's what we look at, high culture teams, right? How do you deal with such scenarios? Yeah.
So I will tell you a scenario, and it's a little bit of an embarrassing scenario in my life. When I had started my career, because I had switched from engineering to a product role, I had started an APM career. At that time, there were not many much material of what a product manager is, but there was this very famous quote. A PM is a CEO of the product and stuff like that. And that time in 2010 or something, it was the quote in Bay Area. I joined a product thinking I am the CEO of the product. Somebody complained to my manager, that this person doesn't listen to anyone. He just thinks he's right. Okay. And this actually happened with me. My manager called me to a meeting and he gave me not a bashing, but in a very nice, polite way, कहते हैं ना धोना किसी को, in a very nice way, he did that to me. But I will say this, that manager was one of the best managers that I've had. And it did not happen in one day. It happened over the period of time that I feel now I'm at a place that if someone is willing to tell me that, Prerit, you are wrong, right? And sometimes they don't even need to have an data, to be quite honest, to convince me. They just need to have a good rationale. They just need to have a good argument to which I don't have a good answer, to which I feel my common sense dictates me, yes, what this person is saying is correct. And I can change my decision and swing in that direction. Of course, you have to convince me with a good argument or with a good data. Keep in mind that sometimes people, what happens is, I have also realized in my own nature, we always try to achieve a local maxima. That is, we always try to achieve what is best for us. When your mindset is what you're trying to achieve is what is best for you, then you will always think that you are right because you think that you can do the best for you. When you're working in a product domain or when you're working in a business domain and you're not trying to achieve a local maxima, you're trying to achieve a maxima for the organization or for your business, then your perspective changes a little bit at that particular point of time. And then you think, okay, you know what? Maybe what the other person is saying is a better idea at that point. The second point that I will make on this is, see, as a leader, you'll always take risks, right? But when you are open to opinions and when you are open to ideas and you're open to thoughts that are there, what you're also doing is you are distributing your risk, because now in the decision making you are not the sole person who is making that decision. Your engineer has contributed an input in that decision making, your marketing person has contributed an input. अब जब फेल होंगे तो सब फेल होंगे, ठीक है? So everyone, nobody wants to fail overall, to be very honest. So it's a very personal selfish thing of mine, to be quite honest. But one of the thing is that once people make, start sharing inputs, they have certain stake in the ground at that particular point of time, right? So those are the two things which has helped me over the period of years, where I have just attuned my brain to stop thinking that I have to achieve a local maxima, but I have to achieve that overall. Does this make sense? You have data, great. Even if you don't have data and my team comes to me with a good rationale that I cannot refute and I have no data point or no good argument to that point, I'm like, okay, let's move with it. And then because then I know that I can go to my leadership. If anyone asks me a question, I can go to my leadership team and I have a good basis to defend it over there. The last thing that I'll say and take a pause is also lower your ego. The moment you have a little higher ego, it's very hard to move your brain from one point to another point. You always think, what I'm doing is right. What I'm doing is right.
Yeah.
So keep those aspects in mind. It might not happen in one day. It'll happen in
I think
a
two
long
very beautiful
time.
points.
Life is very long.
Yeah. But I think two very beautiful points that I can take away from this. One, system dynamics, right? 101, right? What is good for the system is good for you. I think that's the first thing that you kind of talked about. And I think the second thing that I think for ego and generally for people, it is that image that you look in a mirror and you say, this is who I am, or at least this is what I possess, who I am, right? But the reality is very different because because it is एक बात जो मैंने खुद देखी है ना अपनी जगह कि people are very good in giving suggestions and advices and etc. But if you tell them to introspect deeply what they are doing, right? तब नहीं bro. No. How can you say anything? हम तो बहुत smart है. But
I'll say something, Shravan, that one of my manager used to tell me, and I apologize, I'm going to say it in Hindi, or all non-Hindi speaking audience that is there. But he used to say, and he was a friend of mine who also worked with me in Berkeley. He said, ज्ञान सबके पास है और सब लोग ज्ञान बांटते हैं ठीक है समझना किसको नहीं है so just keep in mind to your point everyone has an opinion, everyone is willing to share. Some of the best people that I have seen, to be very honest, Shravan, are the people I see them sitting very quietly in the room on the table, and they are very observant. They listen, they observe, they understand, and then they come to a conclusion. I love working with those kind of people. So yeah, something to just
Makes
keep in
sense.
mind.
Makes so much sense. So I think moving to this, coming from this point only, I think एक सवाल मैं मेरे मन में भी बहुत था मतलब, and this is a very deep question that I always ask, and I get very different answers from different kind of people that I meet. What is culture यार? हम ये सब बड़े बड़े कोट्स होते, culture eats strategy for breakfast and things like that, and there should be a good culture, but how do you in actionable terms define culture, right? And then from there, the second question that I typically ask people, and a lot of times people have this philosophy that culture is more top down, right? The person sitting on the top, that sets the precedent of culture, and then it is what percolates in the company. But is that true? Can a person who's just joined your team, never worked in Adobe or probably the company where you're working with, and come in and start contributing to that culture, right? So ye do sawal hain, which is like a B section of that, that even today, like I join a company with probably the most minimum stake, right, in some kind of a role. Do I not contribute to culture, or do I, my actions don't, or they don't have that kind of impact then? So I think ye do sawal hain. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah.
So I will share few points on this. I will also say that it's been a long time actually. Back in 2009 or 2010, Netflix had launched a document. If you guys have not read it, I will highly recommend that you guys read it. It's a culture document that Netflix had launched. It became one of the most talked about document in 2019, 2009, 2010 in Bay Area. It's a 125 pager PowerPoint that is there. And there were few aspects that they talk about for the culture. First thing that that, and that resonates with me very well. There is no, first of all, clear set definition in a company to say that this is a good culture versus company Y is a bad culture. The reason being is that everyone has their own DNA as to how they want. I have been at companies where I thought the culture of that company was, let's assume, and I'm going to use an example, was a very sales led culture, meaning sales team led a lot of things over there. That was not a culture fit for me because my DNA is not attuned to that. That does not mean that for that business, that culture was wrong, because there are many people who loved it and they enjoyed it over there. But it just wasn't for me to begin with. Then I have been at a company where the culture itself is a very product led culture. And I personally feel that I'm a very good fit for this culture. Now, I cannot say that culture A versus culture B is a good culture, is a bad culture over there. It really depends upon the perspective of the person and what kind of a person you are. Now, I will say that, with respect to culture itself, you will see, on the walls, when you go to certain companies, they will say integrity, they will say communication, they will say transparency. And then you will hear news that the CEOs of the company were caught in fraud. The CEOs of the company, had a big bankruptcy over there, right? So all of those culture things that are written on the wall, they go they go out of the window when you hear such cases happening. So ideally, what happens is that what actually defines a culture of the organization is the kind of people, and I firmly believe in it, is the kind of people who are getting hired in your organization, is the kind of people who are getting promoted in your organization, and is the kind of people who are getting fired in your organization. These three things, hired, promoted, and fired, when you are a part of the company, it will tell you the kind of culture that company has. Again, I am nobody to judge if culture A is better than culture B, or this culture eats that culture for strategy, for for shit and all those things. But the only thing that I will tell you is that when you're in an organization, keep an eye on those things over there. Now, the second question, Shravan, that you had asked is that can I impact a culture? I will take two spectrums of this whole thing. Let's assume you have joined an organization as a SVP or a senior vice president. Now, and you are a very product led person, but you immediately when you join, you feel that the company is a very sales led growth organization, right? What is your job at that particular point of time? Your job is to find what problems are there in the company, right? Communicate effectively and with certain integrity to the right communicators to say these are the problems, and maybe the solution of that problem is that there needs to be a behavioral change in the organization to shift to maybe a more product led growth organization. If that is the case and you are at such a high level in the organization, you do have the authority to impact the change. And it so happens at that time that the culture can come top down. But it's just that as a leader, you have to make that change. Now, that is one end of the spectrum when you're joining at such a high position. But let's take an example of a junior PM or an APM or a senior PM who are joining. I will I want to say that you can make the change and everything, but I will give you certain examples. First of all, I will say you have to understand there are 3 or 4 levels of hierarchy above you, right? So, sorry to say, but you cannot make the change at an organization level, or you will really find it hard to make a change at an organization level. Now, what do you do if that happens? This is what I tell people, and this is what I have also done. I find a champion. I find a person with authority whom I can make a case that this is how it needs to be. And I will tell you something. While it's easy to say that make a case to do something, convincing somebody at a leadership level that what you are saying is the right, it takes a certain amount of communication, it takes a certain amount of tact to do that over there. Now you tell me that, Prerit, I am not able to convince anybody in that organization that this needs to change and stuff like that. My question to you would be, okay, you cannot change that part of the organization, nobody is listening to you. Can you impact the direct reports to you, or can you impact the engineering teams that you are working with? Can you impact the designers that you are working with? Not the whole organization, but a very small subset over there. So let's start over there. If you're able to make a change over there, great, you can measure the impact. If you are not able to make a change even over there, then I will ask you a question which is twofolded. First, Guy, do you have the right skill set? Do you feel that there's a certain gap in that skill set? You have to be honest with yourself. Maybe there is a gap. So you hone that gap. Second, if that is not the case and you have genuinely, with utmost genuinity, you have tried to make a change, then I will tell yourself to ask a question that do you really need to change the culture of this organization? The reason I say that is that as a product manager or any kind of a team member, your main objective is not to build a successful product. Your main objective is to build a successful business. Yes, it is through a product, but what your end goal is to build a successful business. And maybe the culture in that organization is the right culture that it needs to be. Maybe you are not the right fit. And if that is the case, then you are put at test that do you think one needs to change the organization. So it's a long-ended answer to your question,
But I
that
think,
is how I perceive it.
but
Sure.
I think that that's super lovely to kind of, because I also keep telling them that a lot of times we as PMs, whenever we enter a new role, the first thing that we keep doing is saying that we'll make this huge kick-ass thing and then we will tell everyone to make it. But I think trust, culture is also a function of a lot of trust that you develop, right? And I think
Yes.
taking small projects which you can deliver end to end and probably create that high agency structure in the organization is a stepping stone,
Yeah.
which probably you spoke about, right? But now
Certainly.
एक चीज पूछूं, is quitting a bad thing? मतलब like it's how do you think about it? Like you said that I've also made choices in which I probably not did not gel well with the culture of the place, but for a lot of people, right, when situations जो अनुकूल नहीं होती ना, और कई बार
Mhm.
ऐसा होता है कि you are in an organization where people are pushing you from here and there's consistent pressure, and that is what takes a toll on the self worth of people, right? तो क्या मतलब किसी point पे जब आपको लगता है कि your value system does not align or the way that you think about potential growth, right, is quitting a bad thing? Because हमें इंडिया में ना ये बहुत ज्यादा दिखा रखा है कि हम क्विट कर लिए ना तो मतलब हम काबिल नहीं है, we are not capable enough, right? And that is something that is what haunts people for the rest of their lives. And so I
Got
just
it.
want to ask, yeah,
So I will start with an example.
yeah.
My dad was a senior vice president at a company called BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited. He had worked at that company for I think 35, 40 years. He started as an engineer and grew up the ladder. When he hears me that, every couple of years I'm changing jobs, there was actual time when he made the statement कि बेटा तुम्हें कोई रखता नहीं है क्या एक ही जॉब के अंदर. He actually made the statement to me thinking, yeah, what is wrong with my kid? He's changing his jobs every couple of years. So first of all, I will say, see, I understand the dynamics that is in India, because India has worked in a certain fashion over the year. So this mindset might take a little bit of a time to change over there. If you ask me about Bay Area, certainly in Bay Area, quitting is not considered as a taboo that you have changed and stuff like that. Only thing that I will say is, if you are quitting and changing to a different opportunity, do it for the right reasons. I have done it for wrong reasons. And I will give you a very scenario. I'll not tell which companies did I switch, but I will give you a scenario. What had happened was that I was getting promoted. I was moving up the ladder, and the culture was great. I loved the product that I was working in. Everything was good. I just felt I was not getting promoted too quickly. I just felt that, I was getting stagnated. I wanted to get to a certain level. I wanted to get promoted very quickly over there, and I decided to make a lateral move quickly, because I thought that the company in which I am moving is a great company. The media that was there out there for the company was great. Everything was great. I made the switch. I stayed in that company for 1.5 years, and I cannot tell you, that was the most dreadful years of my life. I launched stuff, but nothing that I was too proud of. And after 1.5 years, I decided that I did not want to stay in that organization. I know that I made a wrong choice at that point. So something that I tell people, thoda patience rakho, thoda sabar rakho. All of us will get where we have to be. If you are quitting, if you are changing, it's not a bad thing. Do it for the right reasons. Sometimes the right reason, for example, in US, immigration is a big thing. So sometimes you do it for immigration reasons, sometimes you do it for financial or some, family reasons. But have a solid ground and why do you want to quit, right? Sometimes, my boss in that company was an amazing boss that I had. It was such a wonderful culture that I had, and I loved it. But I just ended up changing it for a wrong reason, and it didn't gel well. And that is something that I learned the hard way. I don't want others to learn the hard way over there.
Awesome. That's super. एक और चीज मैं आपसे ना प्रेरित before I kind of, because I want other people to also ask questions. I don't want to hijack their time. Product managers do want to be always in the spotlight, but not every time, right? So I'll ask you this one very final question that I have. You've been a mentor, right? तो यार मैं दो सवाल आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ कि one of the things that we keep talking about is empathy. You should have empathy, right? And empathy seems like a very popular buzzword these days, right? Everybody
Mhm.
says you're empathetic. What does it truly mean? Like, how do you essentially even act? How do you measure this? It's like saying I'm measuring trust, right? Now that's a very hard thing to do, right? You it is so how do you essentially see, how do you get this fact that whenever I'm meeting a certain person, right? Yeah, I am getting those good vibes that this person is
Hmm.
actually listening to me. क्या कोई तरीका होता है? Is there a way? And how important is this in forming relationships? I think that is my deeper question from a mentor mentee perspective. But how important it is to form relationships with your team, with your colleagues, with your clients, with whoever you are working, and probably more importantly, your family in a certain level, right? I just wanted to understand from you how what is empathy according to you, and I think how deep it is in forming those deeper relationships that you want to take up.
I will maybe give an example, and this is an extremely sad example, and this is an example that happened just 1 week back. So it's a very, very recent example. I was working with a program management team, and there was a point person with whom I was working. I had not done many projects with that person, but I had done some projects with that person. And that person passed away just a week or a 2 week. She was, struggling with cancer over there. I always, and whenever I had worked with that person, very honestly, you will think that I have been in this space for such a long time, right? I would know a lot. And I was talking to the manager of that person, and there has been instances when I went to the manager of that person and said, you know what, I feel that they are not doing these things correctly, or I think that they are not doing these things which are really needed for us to show high efficiency. Now, if you think that my lens was very narrow at that particular point of time, right? I was like, this is what is happening. But what I did not know behind the scenes that was going on is that person was struggling with a certain disease which was very hard. That person had very two small young kids. So that person had to take certain leaves over there. And then on top of that, there were other stuff and family stuff that the person was struggling with over there. And then when the person passed away, I had no idea. I really had no idea. And when that person passed away, I was talking to the manager what happened and stuff like that. And the manager was sharing the story. That manager told me something very interesting. That person's manager told me something very interesting that resonated with me very well. She said, Prerit, sometimes we forget to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person, that what the other person is going through. And we can never know that if we don't ask questions to the person and we just from a far away make judgments by simple observations over there. So when I think about empathy, when I certainly think about empathy in the case of anything in life, right? You first of all start with an assumption that that person's life is very different than my life. So just ground yourself in that reality कि यार उसकी life मेरी life से अलग है. Second thing, you really need to ask questions. In today's date, we are so quick to making assumptions and we are so quick to passing judgment. And with all the social media, everything that is out there, we think that we can, understand everything. But the easiest way is just go and ask a question. Yeah, this is happening. What's wrong? And do it from a place that where you want to support that person, from a place of collaboration, not from a place that you're trying to blame somebody over there, but from the genuine place that I want to collaborate with you, help you, and I'm more than happy to sit down with you and understand what is happening. So that is one thing that Shravan I will say, that if you're thinking of empathy, first of all, make sure that you just ground yourself in the idea every person's life is different, every person's problems are different, every person's use cases are different, right? I see people on the screen, Ajay, Gaurav, Ankit, Saral, many others, right? हर एक की लाइफ में कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स होंगी, हर एक की लाइफ में कुछ अच्छाइयां होंगी, मुझे नहीं पता. ठीक है, like they don't know what I am struggling with right now, right? Ground yourself in that idea, and then don't pass judgments, have an honest conversation and have a honest understanding that what is going on. Let's chat, let's discuss. It's as basic as that. Sometimes we forget to do that, even as product managers, even with our product people and use cases and the customers, we forget to do that. Have some sympathy, have some empathy for people in life. So that is the only example that I can give you, and that is the only thing that I will do. That certainly I do myself very regularly, and quite honestly, I do that with my wife as well. So I know that my wife works very hard. She has a job. She's also working a lot of other things. There are times when I'll just sit down with her. I'll say, hey, what's going on? Tell me. I'm here to help. I'm here to listen. If you're angry at me, just shout at me and I'll listen. That to me is just coming from a place of empathy at that point. So yeah, that's how I deal with
Very,
it.
very beautiful answer. I'll tell one of the things that I have realized about very nice people is that empathy is probably the way you would act when probably no one is watching, right? And when that is the behavior that you emulate. Like, I'll give you a very interesting anecdote. Like, it is a story like 5-6 years back, there was this company used to be called Cloud Cherry. Cloud Cherry
Mhm.
eventually got acquired by Cisco, right? It was a customer success. It was a company like WhatFix, right?
But yeah,
Basically, yeah, something on the FTUE side, right? And what I see is that one fine day, there is this kid who really wants to get into a great product role and whatever. And and the person is sitting there, opened his camera even before I joined the call, and then I talked to him. And that person speaks to me, explains it across to me. It was when I was a group PM at, before that he was a director of product at Intuit. And what I see is that post my effort, they also send me like a 5,000 rupee Amazon voucher, even though I couldn't make it. But then again, they did send it, and I was like, wow, this is so amazing. This is so
yes,
nice, and this is the place that I really want to be, because it shows those things which you probably are least expecting. It is the smallest of things, right? How do you talk? How do you conduct yourself? How do you make the other person feel, right? तो मेरे को लगता है कि कहीं ना कहीं empathy starts in those smallest of places, right? Which happen. But
Yep.
very nice answer. Very ठीक है, जनता. I would want you to please start raising your hands if you have any questions. Feel free to. I'll keep asking people. Yes, in the spotlight. Please, over to you. Ishita is again a product manager, Prerit, right? Please, Ishita, introduce yourself and go for it. Yes.
Hi, Prerit. Thank you, Shravan. So, first of all, Prerit, like I'm currently working with Airtel Payments Bank as a product manager. And thank you so much for sharing the amazing insights on the scenarios that we face in our day to day life. So, my question is that currently I'm handling the payments hub in my company, and as we know that in the payments domain all the things are regulated by certain regulations are there, and we have to be compliant. So payments hub is basically where we do all the transactions of the bank, and we cater to all the verticals that are there. So my concern is like my actually challenge is that how to bring the innovative and new solutions in this, because we are actually bridging the gap in between the use cases and the core banking system. So how to actually build our own product or bring new innovative solutions in that?
So, see, I will tell you a few things, and I'll give you an example. Great, first of all, great to meet you, Ishita. Great to always see a person appear in the fintech and the finance space of things. Um, Two things, Ishita. So you mentioned that Prerit, a lot of compliance is there in payments. A lot of bridging the gaps is there in payments. What you're saying all is very true, and it happens in Adobe as well, because I manage the payments and fraud and ecosystem over there, and subscription ecosystem. It does happen. We have a business in India. India brings UPI, something happens. India brings this, something happens. RBI changes its regulation. It becomes my nightmare that I have to handle with those things over there. So the question I generally ask, Ishita, is first of all, that if I have to do all of those things over there, my first question is, how big is an impact? You will be surprised that there are times when certain things is required by compliance to do, right? If you don't do them, then there are sometimes fines that also get exercised on the business. But my first question generally to my team is that I always ask is, okay, it's fine if we are getting fined on certain things and we have to pay money. How big is the business impact, right? Is the impact very big or is the impact very small over there, right? That is the first question, because I want to understand the magnitude of impact that I'm going to do, right? The second thing that generally I do once I understand over there is, and I'm just taking compliance as an example, how far this change needs to be. Generally, it doesn't happen that the change has to be a compliance change, has to be within a week or so. There is a time window attached to it, right? Now, what happens is, Ishita, that I work with a set of engineers and I work with a set of designers. There are many times, and one of the key metrics, as I was telling you, one of the key metrics that I track is retention rate. And what is retention rate generally? How many customers you are able to retain? How will you retain customers if their payments are successful, right? So if their payments are successful, I want to make sure that I make sure every transaction that goes through, it's a successful payment and customer has a good experience. Now, when I create my roadmap, Ishita, right? First of all, people have this idea, Ishita, that innovation happens by me thinking of an idea that needs to happen. I will tell you, majority of the ideas are not my ideas. Majority of the ideas, I go to conferences, I go to different sessions, I meet people, I talk to Visa, I talk to MasterCard, I talk to American Express, and I collaborate with them to come up with an idea of what I want to achieve. I tell them my problem. This is the problem that I'm facing. Let's discuss and have a solution and a problem. Now, what I do, Ishita, and this is very true in our day-to-day life, is let's assume that I have talking to, let's assume by Visa, and I say to Visa, this is the problem that I'm having. I see a lot of cards are getting failed because of insufficient funds, right? People do not have money in their accounts. I want to give a customer better experience. What are some of the things that we can do with you? Visa comes back with some good idea that these are some of the options that you have. Now, at the same time, I'm also worried about this compliance change or this bridging the gap change and stuff that has to happen. I will generally create a business value for this, right? I will say the business I'm going to get from the innovation that I'm going to do is this, the impact to the customer is this, whereas the cost of not doing certain things is this, right? Now, let me just prioritize at that particular point of time. couple of scenarios that will happen, couple of outcomes, and these are 95% of outcomes that you will see, Shira. The first outcome that will happen is that a compliance is of a magnitude that if you don't do it by a certain date, your business is going to stop. If that happens, there is no way. You have to prioritize. Second output that generally happens is the compliance has an impact, but what it means is you're going to be charged certain extra fees. But I see that the different solution, like the different problem that I want to solve, has a much better value and an ROI. In that scenario, I generally don't prioritize that, and I prioritize the feature that I feel is a good fit. All that I do is I defer that problem. I'm not saying I'm not going to solve that problem. I'm simply going to defer that problem to a later time over there. Generally, majority of the things fall in these two cases. There are exceptions sometimes when I feel the regulation might not be the correct regulation, and there are bodies that I generally interact with and I talk with to try and see if Adobe can get an exception to those scenarios over there. One thing that I will say in all of this, Ishita, in all of this sounds so hunky-dory and easy to do on paper over there. The struggle that you will have is that the moment you say that I want to build feature X, which has more ROI than a compliance thing, it's very hard to get it prioritized because some of the leadership, some of the engineering leadership, some of the compliance leadership, to them, that is the most important thing that needs to get delivered over there. Now, how you handle it and how you communicate that over there, that is a tact, that is a bit of an art and a bit of a communication skills that you have to inbuild. Happy to chat more and give you some pointers on that. But when I am in those situations, that's exactly what I do. We have done that in India as well, and we have done that in many other countries as well. So again, it boils down to priority. How are you able to prioritize and just see different use cases that are possible? But I feel, Ishita.
Such a nice answer.
Thank you so much.
I think I always tell that there are two aspects with which a product manager should be really good at, and I think diplomacy as a word has a very negative connotation, right? But it isn't, right? Because if your value system is right, I think diplomacy is something that we appreciate. We say he's a diplomat, right? I think what is wrong is manipulation. Manipulation is the wrong thing to do, right? So I think speaking the narrative and structured thinking are things which people generally don't account in a PM or a high operator role, but they are super critical. Super critical.
I'll give you an example. Jay Shankar, amazing diplomat. I'm sure all of you guys have heard Jay Shankar. The way he talks, the way he creates a narrative, the way he pursues people. Ishita and others, I will say one point, and something that you guys should make sure that you have: communication. Like, how do you communicate? That is, I have hired people who had no skill, but they were so good at communicating that I fell in love with those people. In life, if you don't learn any skill, but if you learn the skill of communication and how to talk to different people in different scenarios, you will grow very quickly in your career. So I would say that, Ishita, to you and of course to everyone else as well.
That is so nice. I recently told them a funny thing, and please don't quote me anywhere. ये conversation यही रहेगी. मैं इस YouTube पे भी इसको edit कर दूंगा. ठीक है? तो मैंने एक बात बोली थी कि बातों के ही पैसे हैं, वरना हम भी आपके जैसे हैं.
बिल्कुल.
ठीक है. Cool. Now what I'll do is I'll bring Harshit. I'm bringing you on. ठीक है? Awesome. Harshit, over to you. Please go for it.
Hi, Prerit. Harshit. Yeah. So I was recently working with Metric Stream, a governance, risk, and compliance product organization. And the one thing that you said during the lecture, what you do with your wife, basically, I'll try and also do that. That, I'll sit along with her and say, "Aaj aap bolo, aaj main sirf sununga. Aaj aapki bari hai bolne ki."
So I'll tell you something. अगर ना भी सुनोगे, I don't think you have a choice. वो सुना देंगी.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I have some questions. So first one is that what are some of the key lessons that you have learned in your career as a product leader, apart from the two that you mentioned?
एक ही चीज है. Some of the questions नहीं है, एक ही question है. सब बहुत सारे लोगों को.
Okay. So then I'll try to
figure it out what you want to ask and go for it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll ask this one: that how do you ensure that your team feels heard and valued within a closed ecosystem and within the organization as well, at an organization level as well?
Certainly. So let me. I'll tell you only one point, Harshit, that I do, and I do it in a very crude term. I'm saying मैं ये चीज कुत्तों की तरह करता हूँ. Okay, so I'm sorry to say that word, but this is how I do it. I make sure that I answer to every person. I give a response to every single person, every single question that comes my way. You will see my Slack. There has never been any question that generally I don't answer, I don't acknowledge. You will see my emails. There is never an email that I don't acknowledge or I don't answer. There is never any communication or any meeting that I am part of that I am sitting in that meeting and I'm taking, looking at some other website or I'm checking my phone or I'm doing something that is irrelevant. I make sure, Harshit, that when I am a part of the conversation, dunya jai bhar mein, at that particular point of time, that is my focus. If you ask my team when I have my one-on-ones with them or when I have my team meetings with them, my focus is only one. I have to answer their questions. I have to make sure that I unblock them. I have to make sure that they understand that I am there for them. So to me, Harshit, and that is a very important skill set, Harshit, in product management, I will talk about, and I've seen this in other fields as well. People have this, oh, you know what? Let's take this offline. That offline never happens. Oh, you know what? This is a great question. Let me come back to you. That come back to you never happens. Oh, you know what? The idea is really great. Let me put it in the backlog. That backlog never happens. I generally, when I'm having a conversation, I don't use these sentences. Even if I am using these sentences, and even with my upper management, I say, you know what, I don't know the answer. Let me get back to you. Even when I use these sentences, Harshit, I make sure I find the answer and I get back to them. The answer could be that unfortunately, I'm not able to find a good answer. I might need more time, or we might have to wait a little longer to find a good answer to this question. But everyone in my team gets an answer to the question that they're looking for over there. And I always follow up with a question. Does that make sense to you? Because sometimes what I do realize, Harshit, that sometimes I am in a position of an authority to the people who are reporting to me. What happens is, by virtue of things, people tend to just say yes. They think that I'm the person in authority. They'll say yes, whatever you're saying is correct. या फिर they will say, अरे यार ठीक है, बोलता रह रहा है, खत्म कर अपनी बात, and let me move on in life. To be quite honest, so I always follow up with a question. Does that make sense to you? If not, tell me right now, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation. So to me, taking that ownership across the board, that I acknowledge things, I respond to things, and I get back to people, that is looked upon very favorably. And Harshit, I learned this at eBay when I had joined eBay, and it has really served me well. I even answer to the people who are not in my org. I even answer to people who are interns in my org. I make sure that I answer to every person that needs help, because I feel that if I'm in a position of a leadership, it's just my responsibility. And it's just that if I take that ownership, that I want to help out over there. It also comes from a place of little selfishness. मुझे लगता है कल को यार, if I need their help and I need their support, I would want them to rally for me, and I have used that to my advantage sometimes. So that is what something that I will say that I personally do very religiously.
I think this goes back to one of your posts on LinkedIn, wherein you mentioned that you have a manager, earlier in your career, wherein you asked for something to him and he doesn't reply back to you, and later throughout the year that same person reached back to you and asked for a job. So,
yep, yeah. that is very true. That is actually very true. Yeah, that is very true.
I'll tell you something very interesting, which generally is a very a lot of times we in life we do this thing where we feel good intentions mean something. Good intentions really don't mean anything unless they're expressed. Like, I'll give you a very good example. The leaders that I have duly respected, भाई वो किसी भी level पे हो ना, their average response time on an email is like 5 minutes. And they respond back. And that is the reason for us is majority of the tasks that we do na 90% Arshit, वो बहुत immediate हो सकते हैं. That you can do now. We just delay them कि आज नहीं कल कर लूंगा, कल नहीं परसों कर लूंगा. But you realize the implication on the other person. The other person is probably thinking that it's a blocker decision for me, which might be a very trivial thing for you. राइट. बट यही चीज एम्पैथी भी दिखाता है, और यही चीज दिखाता है कि यार दैट पर्सन रियली वैल्यूज माय ओपिनियन, राइट. आप कई बार रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करते, लाइक समबडी मैसेजेस, यू सी द मैसेज, ये ठीक है यार, आई विल रिस्पॉन्ड एट माय ओन लेजर, बट यू डोंट रियलाइज दैट दैट पर्सन हैज लेफ्ट समथिंग टू मैसेज यू फॉर अ सर्टेन कॉन्टेक्स्ट, एंड यू डू दोज थिंग्स. अगर वो भी इज टेकिंग योर टाइम फॉर ग्रांटेड ना, ओवर टाइम दैट पर्सन विल फिक्स हिमसेल्फ, से नहीं यार ये बंदा तो बहुत सॉलिड है. तो one of the things that you should take away as a very good person in life is, if you have very short response times in communication, right, that will serve you insanely well. Insanely well.
And I think one quote that I usually follow is that if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now.
Do it now.
Very
That's
true.
Yeah.
very true. Very true. Awesome.
Thanks,
Now I'll
thanks.
bring Divakar. I'm bringing you on board. Give me a second. Just a second. Yes. Awesome. Divakar, over to you. Please introduce
Sure.
yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Prerit, for the wonderful talk. My question is with respect to organizations. So every organization or most organizations.
Before we continue, just sorry, can we extend for 10-15 minutes? Would that be okay for you?
Sure, we can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Please. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, some of the organizations that are really looked up to by the industry, Adobe being one of them, right? Go through a phase of decline, right, and then pick up, and then there is a lot of anxiety in people's mind, their jobs, right? All the positive psychology goes for a toss, right? When you're thinking whether I'm getting my paycheck next month or not, right? My company, Athena Health, right, prior to my joining, also went through a steep cycle of decline and then uptake. How do you recommend our approach should be when we are in a company in a situation where we are not really sure about the company's future and whether we should make a decision to switch to something else or stay on with the company? Like, just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
That I'll say, Divakar, that sounds like such a simple question that you're asking, but to be very honest, that's an extremely loaded question. That how do you make that kind of a decision? And I will give you an example over there. Inflation started happening in US, right? Google, Facebook, they were laying off people like herds, like 10,000, 50,000 people. And to be very quite honest, in India, situation is much better right now than it is in US. And there was something that Shantanu, who is Adobe CEO, had made a comment. And he said, because someone asked him a question on a forum, said, why do we have this, hiring freeze and all of these things that are giving, he said that, what, the easiest thing that I can do right now is to lay off people, because that will show to the Wall Street we are, reducing our bottom line. But he said that that is not within the DNA of myself and of the company of Adobe. So what we can do over there, we don't want to lay off people because these are all good people that are part of our organization. But what I want to make sure that we cut cost wherever it's not necessary to begin with, right? When leaders in your companies make that kind of a statement now, Divakar, there is a very high sense of trust, and which is followed by action. He was not just making that statement, it was followed by action, and we could see, the whole company could see, and the whole company applauded that gesture that he had done. Not even right now, he had done that in past as well, right? So the first thing that happens is, Narayan, that when you're in a company, you have to see the track record of the company, that how has the company done in the case of crisis. Now, the second thing, and which is unfortunate reality of life, is, Divakar, is that you also have to see what is your circumstances, right? Sometimes a person is financially independent, let's assume, right? He thinks the company is a great, it's just going through a turmoil. I'm fine with it and I can live with that at that particular point of time, right? If that is the case, then continue. You're happy over there, you're financially independent, you can manage over there. 90% of the people are not in that boat, to be very honest. Then what happens is, Divakar, then you have to ask this position, and this is what I do. I'm not saying you have to do this, but this is what I do. If I stay in this position at the time of the turmoil, right, and I work with the company, generally what happens is, Divakar, out of the time of turmoil, there also comes opportunities. Because what happens is, if the company is laying off, right, then there are lesser resources and there are certain people that can take ownership, right, and then can step up and say, okay, you know what, I understand the situation, let me step up over there, right? That is the second question that I generally ask myself. Would it be beneficial overall if these things are happening around my environment and I step up to this situation, right? That is the second question that I generally ask myself. And that I feel, and maybe it's selfish, that I feel that will help me also grow within the organization in the long run. Because generally our view is just 1 year. But if you look in the entirety of your 30 or 40 years of career, it's a very short duration that you're looking at. The last question that I asked to myself, Ryan, is my mental stability. Like, some people are very good at removing the noise, meaning the outside noise and the turmoil that is happening, and they can manage that. If I personally feel that I cannot manage that, yes, I respect the company. Yes, I feel it's a great company to be with. But if it's taking a toll on me and if it's taking a toll on my family, on my personal mental health, then generally I start looking outside. And I say, okay, let me look for the other opportunity. I am not saying that's the right opportunity. I'm not saying that's the wrong opportunity, but it's a personal decision that I make at that point of time. So there are three things that I do. First, what is the track record of leadership that is there? Second, in this turmoil, can I play a valuable role that will make me critical and help me grow? And that sometimes I just go to my manager and I talk to my manager about it. That can I step up over there because then I can be of value. And the third and the last thing is, how is it impacting my mental health and how is it impacting my family? Those three things are the key decision criteria for me. I will say this, Devakar, and it's unfortunate. People, some might agree, some might not agree. It also boils down again to the point that I was making, the financial stability of things. If financial stability is not there, you can talk about all the jargons in the world and everything in the world that is there, but it just doesn't work. The reality of things doesn't work that. So just keep that perspective in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Thank you so much for this answer.
Amazing. Guys, I'll take two more questions. I'm calling Mitali, and I'll probably call one of the people from Abhishek, Saral, and Avneet. Rest of the questions, please give it across to me. I will share it across Prerit, or you can reach out to him by himself in the interest of time. Right? I'll take two more questions. Mitali, I'm bringing you in the spotlight. Yes. Give me a second. Mitali is joining us from Germany. Please, Mitali. Mitali is also a product manager. She has worked considerable time as a PM. Mitali, please, over to you. Go for it.
Thank you, Shravan, for the introduction. Hi, Prerit. Thank you for the great talk. My question is, so you're a product leader, you're a product coach. Okay. What first advice do you give when somebody is coming to you for a coaching? Not just with respect to the product management, but being a coach, what is the first advice that you give? And a follow-up question on that is, which one do you enjoy more? Is being a is taking so much of responsibility at Adobe as a product person, or really helping people with coaching?
I guess, first of all, Mitali, nice to see you from Germany joining in. I'll say just one point, Mitali, on this, that I feel is really critical that I tell everyone. If you are a leader, always keep thinking you are just not the best leader. And there is always something to learn for you. The day you start thinking, right, that you are the best leader that there is out there, that's a problem at that particular point of time. And the analogy that I give is, no parent is a best parent. Like, everyone learns over the years, they will learn, right? There is no concept of a great parent, so there is no concept of a great leader, right? And some of the great leaders that I have worked with, that I call them great, Mitali, I have seen them reading books, I have seen them going to seminars, I have seen them communicating with people, and they listen, and the only reason they listen is that they want to learn. Those kind of leaders are just exceptionally good leaders. So the only advice that I give to people is that if you think you're a great leader, right, first of all, remove that notion of great leader from yourself and have the ability to learn, right? Because that's what I have observed a lot of great leaders to do. Second point that you said, Mitali, do I enjoy being a product coach or a product person over there? I generally don't consider myself, Mitali, as a coach. Generally, I consider myself as a mentor. Coach, generally what happens is, Mitali, has a vested interest in everything that the other person is doing. Sometimes I don't have that vested interest, to be quite honest, Mitali. This is what I will say. What I have learned over the years is, Mitali, that I have had certain experiences, right? I have had certain good experiences, certain bad experiences.
Mhm.
All I can do is I can share those examples with someone else. If someone else comes to me and says, Prerit, I'm struggling to work with this person is very hard to work with, then I can give them an example of how I handle that person. If a person comes to me and says, Prerit, yeah, I really struggle. I'm stuck at a senior product manager. I'm not able to move to a principal role, right? Because I have gone through that phase. I can give them examples of what I had done, right? So to me, I generally consider myself as a mentor, and even to my team, I generally consider them as a mentor to say, look, guys, I can tell you from my examples. If I don't know the answer, I will bring in the person who knows the answer, who can help you out. So that is more important to me,
More
which
important.
I do enjoy more. I actually enjoy both. I have no qualms. God has been kind. So I really have no qualms. I enjoy being a mentor to people. I enjoy to whatever capacity I can be, and I enjoy doing the products as well. But yeah, both are great, Midali.
The most
Good to know.
amazing
Thank you.
the most amazing thing I'll tell you, Mitali, is that at any given point in life, we are both students and mentors, right?
Yep.
Because you're learning something from somebody in a certain context, that person can teach you anything. So the great people who are really great, right? They're ever learners. They have this ability to calm themselves down and listen to the other person if it makes sense, right? And that is a very special ability. Believe me,
Yep.
that happens. Last person, Avneet, I'm bringing you in. Okay? Please make the question succinct, Aram, and we will try. Janta, for now, there will be other chances. I will share it across with Prerit, and you can reach out to him. He will be kind enough to essentially answer you across, but only in the interest of time. I'm just giving it. Saril bhai, आप question मेरे को लिख देना, ठीक है? If you have any question the question that you want to ask, I'll forward it across. ठीक है? Avneet, over to you.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Hi, Prerit. Thanks for having this. Good. It was good having you. So my question is regarding the payments industry. So you've worked in this for quite some time now. So what has been the biggest risk that you have encountered? So is that has that been from the compliance side or from the financial crimes side? And how have you mitigated it currently?
So I will tell you, Avneet, see, in the payments in the fintech industry, now Avneet, what happens is, of course, during the time of compliance and all of those things, those are certainly risks that are there. But let me take a step back and talk about big tech companies like Adobe, Amazon, Walmart, all of these big tech companies. Generally, what are the risks? During the time of crisis and during the time of recessions, what generally happens in the payment industry is, Avneet, that people are struggling, right? People are struggling for money in their bank accounts to get food. People are struggling for groceries and stuff like that, right? At that time, generally nobody is thinking that, what, I need an Adobe subscription, or nobody is thinking, what, I want a Netflix subscription. If you don't have the money to eat, what will you do with all of these subscriptions that are out there? One of the greatest risks in fintech, and same thing goes for like neo fintech banks and stuff like that, because when people are taking money out of your bank because they need money to eat food and stuff like that, how do you manage that? So the greatest risk that I have personally faced of need in my career in the fintech space has been that during this time of crisis, how as a product manager and product leader, and what can I do for these customers who are actually struggling and cannot afford to use our business at that particular point of time, right? Now you have to understand a need. One can always say give it for free, right? And that might be the answer to those questions, but then you have to strike a balance versus solving that kind of a problem for the customers, making sure that there's a business to survive, because you can't give everyone everything free. The business itself will not survive to begin with. That is a really, really, really tough problem to solve. And in those situations, you have to make certain decisions. Going back to what Shravan was saying, you need to have empathy with that person. That might sound that in payments, what, compliance might be the biggest risk, or fraud might be the biggest risk. But when I really think about it, that what truly matters, the people that we serve our products to, it has been these times of crisis, like when COVID had hit, when financial crisis took place, right? Business takes a hit, and we know that customers are not able to afford the services that we are giving. So how do we show them value, and how do we make sure that we empathize with them and give something that they can manage? at that particular point of time. So to me, that is generally the biggest risk and biggest problem that I have to solve and make some really tough decisions at that particular point of time and get that alignment with the business over there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, this has been super lovely. I think I have one question, and you would have to take 2 minutes for that. How do
Yeah.
I become calm like you? That's my question. How do I become a calmer person? Because I'm like 180-degree opposite of what Prerit is, right? And everybody would agree, right? So how do I become calmer in life? Can you give some advice?
See, the only advice that I will give to anyone, my brother had asked me one thing that long time back. He said, Prerit, are you happy? And at that particular point of time, a financial crisis had hit, and I was struggling to find my first job because US was not giving H-1B visas at that particular point of time. So it was very hard for me. And he asked me on the phone. He was already in US. He said, Prerit, are you happy? I took a pause and I said, in the larger scheme of things, I think I'm happy, right? You will be, if you start looking, life in 1 day scenarios, in 1 day data points, then yes, one can make an argument that I'm not happy today, I'm happy tomorrow, not happy. But if you look at from a very larger lens, right? Like maybe all of you guys might be 25 years, 30 years, 35 years.
Yeah.
Has life been that much of a struggle? You guys have good education. I'm hoping you guys have, good schooling, good parents, good jobs that you guys are doing. Is life that bad? When I think that, then generally I'm calm and I think, okay, in larger scheme of things, I think I'm happy. I'm content. Yes, there will be daily maximas and daily lows and highs and stuff like that, but that's okay. It's okay.
So
And
good.
the second thing that I finally do is don't take things personally.
Yeah.
Life is too short to take things personally, and don't let your happiness be governed by what other people are thinking. जब दूसरों की बात, सबसे बड़ा रोग क्या कहेंगे लोग? So when you start thinking life in that perspective, it becomes a struggle to live life. So
Yeah.
to me, and I do that in product management as well.
Yeah.
100 लोग बोलते रहते हैं, okay, great. Everyone's opinion is welcome over there. So if you abide by these two things, you'll certainly be a little bit more calmer. On the contrary, if you ask my wife, is Prerit a calm person? She'll be like, yeah, ये तो बहुत uncalm person है. So
I'm
that's a state
sorry.
in mind.
And I'm telling you very honestly, don't quote me anywhere. वो किसी की भी wife आपसे खुश नहीं रहेंगी, ये बात सच है।
I'm sure.
आप चाहे आप कुछ भी बोल लो,
नहीं,
ये
दूसरों की तो मुझसे खुश नहीं रहेंगी, but I don't care about them.
very cool, yeah, very cool. So what I would do quickly, Prerit, is we take a small photograph. I want everybody to please showcase your beautiful faces. The most ugly people already चेहरा दिखा रहा है आपको, दिखा रहा है वो बंदा, तो भाई आप क्यों नहीं दिखाओगे? ठीक है? So on 3 and you do something like this. ठीक है? 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Awesome. Super cool. So Janta, the one thing that you have to show as gratitude to our speaker, right? And there were so many value bombs today. I think this was such an amazing conversation. Is that आप अपना feedback Slack पे लिखोगे और मैं वो प्रेरित को भेजूंगा. Any questions that you have, please reach out to me or you can directly reach out to him. And simultaneously आग लगा दो. ठीक है, लिंक्डइन पे आग लग जानी चाहिए और ये होना चाहिए और सबको वैल्यू मिलनी चाहिए. आई थिंक लेट्स कीप फॉस्टरिंग दैट अबंडेंस माइंडसेट. बट ब्रो, once again, I'm so grateful. Thank you very much for taking out the time. I think I learned so much as I could have, right? और मेरे लिए क्यों ये important होता है ना, क्योंकि for me as an educator, when I hear very different perspectives from different people, I think it makes me a better storyteller. So in my own selfish interest, I learned a lot.
I will say one last point to all of you guys. Shravan by itself is a very humble person. He keeps saying, I am learner. इस बंदे को बहुत पता है. So you guys are in a very good cohort to begin with. He's humble and he has this humility that he doesn't acknowledge, those things. But you guys are in
आना भी तो चाहिए उसके लिए, कुछ आना चाहिए.
No. I'm sure बहुत आता है. But you guys have this wonderful audience. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you, Prerit. Thank you very much once again. Bye bye. Take care. Have a great day. Bye bye. Take care.